Dr. Lin Yang is an epidemiologist at the Department of Cancer Epidemiology and Prevention Research. She'll be discussing her previous work done in large U.S. prostate cancer, and she's also done work in Vienna and in Norfolk in Britain. And she said, don't spend too much time doing my introduction. I'll do that for me. All right.
Thank you.
Please help me in welcoming Lin Yang. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really glad to be here. I'm Lin. I'm originally from China, and I moved to Calgary 13 months ago. So I'm a new Calgarian and also a new Canadian. Today I'm going to be here talking about cancer and aging. And
just move the mic a little closer.
Yeah.
Is this better?
How's that?
Okay.
I understand that half of us are half deaf, so.
Is this better?
Do you need a pointer?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, you just press that little button.
Okay. So I have to be honest that I put aging here just because I think that people will be more interested in it. But I think aging is just a number, and what matters is your psychological and physiological age instead of chronological age. And what matters more is that how to keep your body moving and keep active and keep fit. How do I do this?
Just down arrow.
Okay, all right. So my research has been focusing on energy balance, meaning physical activity, sedentary behavior, nutrition, and obesity. Why do I study that? Actually start off my bachelor's degree from Beijing Sports University, and I was an athlete before. Now you can't see that anymore because of my lifestyle has changed. Where you can see that the burden, so this is a graph showing that the types of disease burden has been changing from 30 years ago to now. We can see that the burden from the non-communicable, is it working? Okay. The burden from the non-communicable disease has been growing over time, and but most of the conventional medical training is more focusing on more focusing on those communicable diseases. When I talk about non-communicable disease, they are cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even now obesity. So what matters here is that lifestyle is the biggest driver of non-communicable disease. And I don't know how many of us know the guideline for physical activity. So there are actually guidelines, national, international guidelines from different countries recommending how much physical activity one person should do. And the recommended level, I'm citing the guideline from World Health Organization here, that adults, older or just general adults, should be engaging in 75 exercise or physical activity at vigorous intensity, or 150 exercise or physical activity at moderate intensity. So what does this mean? Vigorous and moderate? And moderate is more like, for example, if you're doing a brisk walking or a slow jogging where you can still keep your breath, making a conversation. So that's more like at the moderate level. And it goes harder to if you couldn't keep the conversation going, getting like breathless, that's more at the vigorous level. And so that's the weekly level. That's not a small amount, right? But how are we doing? So this is the most recent data from Canadian adults population. We can see that only 60% of the adults are meeting this guideline. And this is another one of the reasons that I was so interested in physical activity research, that if I can cite those words, that special exercise should be prescribed on an individual basis for convalescents and for weak and older patients. So physical activity is not just for healthy population, it's for people who have existing condition or older or weaker. Can you guys guess who said that, or in which part of the history people, or those citations are from? So it was written by Dr. Mauricualis, who is an Italian physician, who is also the father, I would consider he's the father of sports medicine or physical therapy. And those words are really rather ancient wisdom from 500 years ago. What is the situation now is there was just a paper published last week talking about exercising people over 85. And 85 is just a number there, but basically it's saying that everyone who wanted to get the benefit should be getting the benefit of exercise. There's no limitation on age or physical condition. More relevant to cancer, we're talking about aging, is that we all know that there's a global aging happening right now. Actually, in Canada, the number of adults whose age are 65 and older will grow from 6 million to 9 million in the next 20 years. And the proportion of those older adults will grow to 30%, I think, by 2040 or around that time. So we can see that a lot of the cancer burden are from this increasing number of older population. But I would like to ask a question, what does really older mean? Does it really mean weak? It's not really necessary, right? So, because I think age is just a number. And what matters is how your physical fitness is, how fit you are. And in my opinion, the best way to define age is not by chronological age instead of looking at how fit you are. Because we probably can't change the number of your age, but there are ways to change your fitness level. So I think the better way to describe your body condition is to look at how fit you are. Is this person at a pre-frill or it's at a frill stage? And so the frailty, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this definition. Basically, I see that as a definition of how strong your body is to handle external stressors. All types of stressor, like physical stress or mental stress. And that is the reason why older people at the same age can be at a very different physical capacity, and they can have very different physical function. And you may wonder why I keep talking about this. One of the reasons is that there are data showing that prostate cancer may, so we don't really have too much data. It's getting a lot of research attention that prostate cancer and the prostate cancer treatment may accelerate aging. So that means the physical function, including some studies have shown that the cognitive function may also decline with prostate cancer or prostate cancer treatment. But it's not that we can't change it. And there has been a guideline issued on this. I have to mention this. This is like a top journal in cancer research. So basically all the clinicians read this journal and they are more like golden information. So this journal published a guideline back in 2012 and making nutrition and physical activity recommendations for cancer survivors. And this is more like a general cancer survivors, not really specific to any types of cancer. I think this is really nice that because this journal is, the audience are more focusing on clinicians or healthcare providers who I think are the drivers of some of the behavior change of everyone. Because my research is more focusing on at population level, how we can change the behavior. I can talk to one person, say that exercise is good for you. This person may change this behavior, this person may not. But if it's from a healthcare system level, it's a physician tells everyone he or she sees, I think that's a stronger effects there. So I started looking at, in the US, so I have this access to the data in the US. I look at, are those healthcare providers giving physical activity or exercise advice to the patients that they see? I listed 4 types of conditions here, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and cancer. What we saw was that the proportion of diabetes patients getting an advice from their healthcare provider to do more physical activity or exercise was consistently high in the past 10 years. Nearly 70% of the patients are getting such advices. But for cancer patients or cancer survivors, the proportion was really low. Less than half of the cancer survivors are getting those kind of recommendations. But we saw we can see an increase in the past 4 or 5 years. I thought that maybe actually matters because of the 2012 guideline has been published, so more clinicians or healthcare providers have read it, so they start talking to the patients I see. And also, I was curious, does it work? Like a physician tells the patient to do something, will they do it? So I look into those associations where we found was that for those people who were advised to increase physical activity or exercise, they're almost three times more likely to change their behavior in terms of increasing their physical activity or exercise level. And now I'm curious again, when you guys see your physician or nurse or primary care or anyone in the healthcare system, have anyone talked to you about physical activity or exercise as a way to manage your condition? No? Yes? Some? Not all? Some? Okay. So if it's not all, we still have more work to do.
We as an organization have promoted that, but I'm not so sure that the physicians are issuing that as a prescription per se.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think they're doing that for prescriptions yet, and I'll talk more why.
And they probably don't even talk about it very much at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And there was a new study, or it's more like a statement published on this journal. It was about half a year ago, and it's really emphasizing on the importance of exercise, and it's actually calling exercise is medicine in oncology, and every clinician should start working and do more to engage their patients to start moving over cancer. So what are the evidence bases, why we say exercise is good? So actually for most of the evidence are from exercise and cancer risk. Most of the evidence are there. And actually for prostate cancer, we also have evidence to show that after diagnosis of prostate cancer, if you increase your physical activity level, there is a reduced risk of prostate cancer associated with mortality. So that's great news. So because we can change your physical activity or exercise level. And also when we look at the outcomes around cancer survivors' health outcome, we can see that physical activity after cancer can really battle treatment associated side effects and the quality of life improvement. The physical activity appears to be good, but there are also a few questions we don't know, because from the mortality data, how exercise can reduce the mortality of prostate cancer patients was showing that the exercise needs to be vigorous exercise. That is quite intense. But is this really necessary? We have looked into this question in a cohort. It's called the Prostate Incontinence and Erectile Function Study. We call it the PI. This study was done in St. Louis, Missouri. So basically, it was a longitudinal study of prostate cancer patients. The whole study started from a long time ago. This is the cohort about 440 localized prostate cancer patients who go through surgical treatment. So we were interested in whether obesity and physical activity before the procedure may have an influence on urinary and sexual functions. And we also, in our study, collect as many as information on individual level factors, disease factors, as well as environmental factors. There was a small focus group also done in between of the study, but that study, because it was in the context of the US, was more focusing on how African American prostate cancer who have known higher risk are being engaged in physical activity. But what I want to talk about here is that we actually did extensive measurement on physical activity, and we had 2 measures of physical activity in the study cohort. One of the measure was questionnaire, which is the most commonly used method in any types of epidemiological study. But we also supplement that with the axograph device, which is a more accurate measure of physical activity. I'll tell you why next. And then the outcome we look at again, it's expanded prostate cancer index composite. This is index can measure urinary and sexual function among prostate cancer patients. It doesn't matter which treatment did you go through, and this EPIC, we call it EPIC 50. This is a pretty good measure on the prostate cancer survivor outcomes. And this analysis is ongoing. What we found was that your physical activity level before the surgery can be beneficial to the long-term sexual and urinary function. But I want to say that finding was based on questionnaire data. But the questionnaire measured physical activity, does it really mean the real level of exercise? This is what we're going to find out here. I'm just going to quickly go through this because we've already talked about it. So what we were interested in is, when we want to get the benefit of exercise, does it have to be vigorous? But what does vigorous mean? So how we measure the intensity of exercise is using MET. This is a MET score, which is the metabolic equivalent task score. And this measure is define the amount of oxygen consumed while sitting at rest. So you don't have to know all the details, but what I want to show you is that there are examples of activities at different MET score. Basically, the lower of the MET score, the less intense of the activity. And the higher the MET score, the more intense the activity is. But what is a vigorous? Vigorous activity, meaning that MET score above 6. And moderate intensity is below 6 and up to 3. So what are those examples? So remember, I was saying that from the previous epidemiological study, if you want to benefit from exercise, it has to be vigorous. So that means basketball, soccer, backpacking, quite intense. This is probably not as enjoyable as things like volleyball, golf, or dancing, or just walking. And the advantage of our study is that we used both devices to measure the physical activity. and we can compare, because we know that this device measures physical activity much better, and because most of the evidence are from questionnaire, so from the comparison of the two devices, we will know actually what we thought the benefit from vigorous activity can actually be gained through doing less intense physical activity, which is more accessible for most of the people. I know there are probably too much technical details, but basically we ask the participant to wear this device on the hip for 7 days, and so that measures your whole body movement, which is quite accurate estimate of your actual physical activity level. And the questionnaire is, you just answer those questions. Did I do this? Did I do that? Which we all know that there will be so many bias and inaccurate estimation. So we take the measure of physical activity by both the small device as well as the questionnaire at 4 time points. And so we compare them. If we look at the questionnaire data, the average daily minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity is quite good. It's around 45 minutes before the surgery, 5 weeks. It's 15 because everyone's recovering, and it went back to 45 and 47 minutes per day at 6 months and 12 months after surgery. So if we just look at the questionnaire data, everybody was doing quite good. If you still remember, the recommendation guideline is 150 minutes per week. So that's about less than 30 minutes. If you just look at this number, everyone's doing great. But if we move on to the accelerometer data, it's actually, according to accelerometer, which is a more accurate measurement, the number of moderate to vigorous physical activity is less than 5 minutes. But most of the activity were spent at light intensity physical activity. We can see that if we use a yes and no measure to see how many people are actually meeting the physical activity guideline, we can see that from questionnaire data, seems like many people are meeting the guideline, but the reality is no. But another interesting thing, I think is super interesting, is that when we look at their trend, it's too busy. Is this slides too busy? I guess this slide's too busy. But what's important is that we can see the change over time. This decline, recover of questionnaire measured moderate to vigorous physical activity agree with the trajectory of accelerometer measured light intensity physical activity was also decline, recover. So what does that tell us? It tells us that when we look at the more accurate measured moderate to physical activity, actually people are not that active. But this is not too bad because the previous evidence linking the benefit of physical activity and mortality was based on questionnaire. So that actually means that even though the previous evidence show us you need to be vigorously or moderately active, but the benefit may actually be gained from light time physical activity. Does it make sense? Just some measurement issue there. Another question I was interested in, what types of exercise? Do you guys ask that question too? Or no problem? Or never thought about it? Or just go to the gym? How many of you are regularly active or exercise? Wow, amazing. So what types of exercises do you do? Strength, aerobics, balance, stretching, everything?
Elliptical.
Elliptical?
Elliptical.
Okay, cool. Great. So that's great. And also, like, you go to a gym, most of the time you'll probably get a program combining all the benefits. But I guess you need to go to a gym, or it very depends on the equipment, what you have. I want to show some evidence showing that how those exercises can benefit you. We know that the increased knee extension strength, which is the indicator of muscle strength, where you can gain from strength training, are associated with decreased cancer mortality risk. So this is good, it's protecting. And we have very, very strong evidence showing that how your heart health is, how fit your heart is, the cardiorespiratory fitness is the very strong predictor of decreased cancer mortality risk as well. We just worked out this evidence last week that another indicator, I don't know how many you guys actually do balance exercise, it's really good for you as well. And when I work all these slides, we could show that the balance is associated with cancer mortality benefit as well, that I was so curious, so I tried the balance test myself at home as well. I recommend you to do that as well. It's a good training too, I guess. You lift your arm and standing on the solid ground, then open eye, close eye, see if you can stand for 30 seconds, and then do that again on like a soft surface. And I tried it on my mattress. I was quite happy about my results. But then I come to again, what types of exercise is good if you can do all of them, because every element is very important. And I'm not biased at all. Like I said, I'm from China, and Tai Chi is from China. Tai Chi is actually invented in the province where I was from. But Tai Chi actually has it all. Tai Chi can combine strength, aerobics, balance, and stretching training all together. And I'm not making that up. I'm not making that up. We just did a study. Look at all the interventions have done in the past 20 years using Tai Chi as an intervention for chronic disease management. Not many studies have done among cancer patients. Really, I think 20 at most. But there were like 2,000 intervention, Tai Chi intervention in all types of diseases, and we can see that. Tai Chi improves balance, even among Parkinson's disease patients. That's quite impressive. And it can also improve cardiorespiratory fitness in different types of disease patients. And I have to mention that for some of the conditions, compared to conventional exercise, Tai Chi can actually improve cardiorespiratory fitness more, which was surprising because we thought Tai Chi is such a low impact, low intensity activity. How can that actually benefit your heart more than aerobics exercise? And that's something that I really want to find out. We have evidence showing that Tai Chi is benefit for muscle strength, and that one was from a study done among cancer survivors. And again, there are still very, very few study or well-designed study have done in this population, and I think that there's a lot of potential to go. And as I said, Tai Chi is low impact. Everybody can do it. You don't have to be super fit to go on a treadmill or lifting weights. And more importantly, I think the benefit of Tai Chi is that you don't need any equipment. You don't even need to have a yoga mat. Just anywhere. And you don't even need to wear gym shoes, actually. You can be barefoot as well. And the American College of Sports Medicine actually define Tai Chi as a mindful exercise. Why is that? Because the practice of Tai Chi have a emphasis on being mindful of your movement. And I think you guys probably know the mindful study that, yes, I think it's Professor Linda Carlson. She's done a mindful study how that can be a stress reduction or managing the psychosocial distress. But Tai Chi has it all. It has the mindfulness aspect as well. So, like I said, I'm not biased at all, but I think it's a really great exercise. So what I've been doing after I come here is that I try to develop a Tai Chi clinical trial to look at a prehabilitation intervention for psychological and physical preparation prior to radical prostatectomy, just because I've showed you the cohort study I've done in the US where we found that what happens before you start the treatment can influence your treatment outcome. And I've done a small survey study in Calgary as well that I'm not showing the results here due to confidentiality, and it was, unpublished results, but what we found was that not many people felt they had enough preparation before they started surgery, and the waiting time was not too short. And most of the preparation are information sharing, and I think there were people looking for psychosocial support as well. And another issue with exercise is that even people know exercise is good, and the access to this kind of program is not so convenient. And many intervention or study like this did not involve caregiver. And I think that was a topic that kept coming up when we were doing this kind of qualitative work, that caregiver involvement was not too much considered in the prostate cancer interventions. So this is a study that I'm trying to develop. Hopefully we'll get the study funded one day, soon. But also, just given the benefit of exercise and the psychological preparation for any types of patients, I'm interested in developing similar intervention in non-surgical prostate cancer survivors as well. And as I said, I'm new to Calgary. I'm always looking for more research questions, and that's another reason that I'm really happy to be here, to be able to have this conversation, to look for more questions that we can work together to solve some problem. So to cover up what I've talked about, chronology age does not mean physiological or function age. It's just a number. And what matters is how fit you are and how well you're feeling. And that's another issue, that most of the study don't look at geriatric assessment, and I think that type of assessment can tell you more of how well your body is functioning, which is particularly important in cancer population, because there has been study indicating that cancer and the cancer treatment may induce accelerated aging. We hope that we can develop more study to understand why and how to better prevent it. But so far, the evidence showing that exercise can actually effectively fight with aging. And even though people sometimes think that exercise has to be very intensive, sweating, heavy workout, but that's not always the case. And everyone can find a way to exercise, move more, sit less, and no one should be precluded from the benefit of exercise. That's all. Thank you very much.
Questions?
I'm pretty sure I bored you guys at certain points.
I would ask, I don't know if you're familiar with Nicole.
Yeah. She's great, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, because I think many of us are familiar with the True North
Yeah.
group, and the Alberta Cancer Exercise Program, of which
Yeah.
some of us have joined, and so
Yeah.
that's that's one. But if you're familiar
Yeah.
with that, that's good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Nicole has been so helpful, and she's also on the study that I'm developing for the prehab, because most of her study are community level physical activity promotion for cancer survivors, and I asked her for her support on this. What we can do for the cancer survivors before the treatment starts, and she's great.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
Good.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Frank.
I'm sort of curious what your take is on what is it about the part of exercise, the physiological response in the body that impacts the cancer. You know, we know obviously exercise, we're humans, our evolution says we were made to walk, run, and not exercise. But what do you think fundamentally is the physiological underpinnings of that the cancer reacts to and gets mitigated in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we don't know everything about cancer, right? The etiology and the progression. But what we know about it was one of the biological pathway is chronic inflammation. And exercise can effectively reduce chronic inflammation, and this is known. And also, there are strong data, not in cancer population, but in the general population, where exercise can actually boost your immune function, which is always good for fighting cancer as well. But now I mentioned that there was a study done on Tai Chi and breast cancer survivors. That study was done in UCLA, University of California in Los Angeles, where they look at how they meant to look at how Tai Chi intervention may affect the sleep quality among breast cancer patients. And so they also look into immune function markers, then they found reduction on those markers as well during the Tai Chi intervention.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that there's at least for myself, there was a critical period of time when after I was diagnosed, and that was a period of perhaps 6 months after I was diagnosed, that I was in probably extreme stress.
Yeah.
And I've not yet started any treatment per se. What kind of time period do you think is going to be critical for the objective of your work relative to diagnosis to surgery?
Ideally, I think the critical time period is after biopsy. But I think that's a difficult time to design a proper study, and that's why I decided to do after the diagnosis. And also, in a way, it's very personality matters as well. Some people, you tell them that now you have this diagnosis, you need to start preparing, and this will help you. They'll be like, okay, I'll do it. And some other, not everyone will think like that. Some people will be like, no, I'll start smoking because I'm behaving so well, and am I being videotaped? There's just, there's all those personality reactions. You never know how people will think about an intervention like this. What's their acceptance of that? But from my point of view, just to get people go through their treatment better, the earlier the better.
I think psychologically they'd be better prepared for a biopsy if, in fact, you were to start some kind of intervention with Tai Chi, for example, right after the diagnosis. Because I know many people struggle even with the thought of having a biopsy.
Yeah.
They really struggle.
Yeah. And another thing I was interested in that, I don't know if I should touch that topic, that after biopsy, then your diagnosis, then you go through some time to make decision on your treatment, right? And the treatment decision was not just given by your physician, it's a shared decision. What are the triggers for you to make that decision, to pick that treatment?
Well,
I feel like there was a lot of psychological drivers as well.
I think the issue is how much time does the, in this case, very likely the urologist have to spend with you
Yeah.
on a psychological matter, on a physical stamina matter. They don't deal with that.
No, they don't.
And yet that is a critical time.
Yeah.
I do remember getting a call about 10 days after my diagnosis. And as I recall that call, it was all about suicide.
Oh.
And so that's an issue.
But
They
would
weren't
this,
suspecting me, but they were just, the line of questioning by the nurse over the phone was leading me to have her come to an understanding that I was okay psychologically.
okay.
But that occurred 13 years ago now. I
Okay.
don't know if anybody is
Yeah.
on the phone today right after a diagnosis, but it's, you didn't get anything, yeah.
Okay. Was there anything that you felt like you guys felt would have been helped before your treatment started?
Before the biopsy,
Treatment.
before the surgery,
Yeah.
I think you're on the right track, personally.
Yeah.
But in some instances, the urologist is giving you all of 2 minutes, and he's already jabbed you with the ADT. And now this is a brand new situation. It's not what's happening between diagnosis and surgery. You've got this intervention called ADT
Yeah.
in order to shrink the
Shrink,
gland,
yeah. Yeah.
So that's a complicating factor for your study.
That's a very good
Definitely.
point. Yeah.
And I would add to that too, in my experience, and I would agree with Stuart here, is that these health professionals are very busy people,
Yeah.
and they don't have the time and necessarily the skill set to sit and talk to you about your cancer. They see it as a very significant obstacle that you're facing in your life, and that ultimately it's going to result in your death. And so they're focused on trying to convince you, in spite of all of the side effects of surgery, this is what you have to do. In spite of all the side effects of radiation therapy, this is what you must do. So they usually let you make the decision if you're in that position where it could be surgery or it could be radiation. But I would concur with Stuart that if you had 10 or 15 minutes with them, that would be, unless things have really changed dramatically, that's about as much time as you're going to have.
Right.
And I was recently on a trip on a special scan in Montreal, and I was sitting with 3 other gentlemen, and their lack of knowledge of their cancer and what they were doing, even why they were doing this scan in Montreal, was absolutely appalling. And when you talk to them, they have zero information from the urologist or their oncologist. And I say that I believe that that is the common thing. It's not atypical for a patient. We see a lot of warriors come in that have next to no knowledge and no understanding, and there is, in my case as well, a reluctance for patients to come in and ask a lot of questions because they're asked the same questions every day by all these patients. In fact, they should just probably put a booklet together and give it to the patient so the answers are all there, but they don't. So that's the way it works.
That's good. So you mean that they don't have a booklet like that to? No, okay. And there's no like shared decision tool to go through all the pros and cons of each treatment? No.
Well, we try, and it's on that table there. But you
Okay.
won't get that kind of information from the neurologist.
But that's what should happen, they should have that, and we said that, like, I just got diagnosed a couple months ago, and we were just shocked at how little time they spent with you, and it's like a simple thing to hand out a book list, for example, or what you're talking about, exercise interventions, when when you know that you're going on ADT, for example, we hardly even knew what that meant, because it was so sudden. I was diagnosed quickly, so if they'd had like a booklet with some of the stuff, like exercise is almost like number one importance in a lot of that stuff. So it would have been nice if they'd done that with a short list of books and information topics.
I'm a little bit surprised because when I was working in the States, we planned to do these projects where have a multimedia information package or toolkit for newly diagnosed survivors, just because we realized that information was very much lacking. People are looking for information to understand what are the consequences and the benefits and harm of each types of treatment decision. And when I moved here, and I went to Prostate Cancer Center, and I thought they have all those programs, and they have this education session on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, I don't remember which day, where they actually invited clinicians to talk about those treatment options. And I think they have this buddy program where you can have conversations with people who have gone through this experience to share, but so I guess that's not reaching everyone.
That's right. I think there's some, I just had a friend of mine who was recently diagnosed as well and went to the information sessions. And I think they present some basic information, but they don't go into any depth of really good understanding. And I can say this in honesty for this individual because they put him on a sort of an active surveillance piece, let's say for a little while, but his PSA continued to rise. And then they thought, well, the PSA, and I think it was 6 or 9, and they said, well, no, I think we've got to do surgery. And so when do you want to do the surgery? He said, well, it's summertime, and I want to take some vacation, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and maybe I'll do it in the fall, like maybe towards just, November. And that's like a 4 or 5 month gap. And I said to the person, like, really, you have to think about that. Like, if I were in your shoes, I would want to get intervention ASAP.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to wait 4 or 5 months for the PSA to go even further, or for perhaps, for the cancer to spread in the part. So I think there's a perception that the doctors are really informative and all that, but I think they're overly taxed here, and they just don't have the time to really get into these things. And you can't force, I guess, patients to do what they don't want to do. So it's easy for them just to go along with the patient and say, sure, we'll delay for 6 months. We have a gentleman that just died in December, Mike, and if you remember, sir, his biggest criticism was that he did exactly that same thing. Instead of getting treatment, he went skiing, and he went on holidays, and he waited 8 or 9 months, and he said, I wish.
That's
and
too
when I know
long.
now, I had done the proper thing, but he didn't. Again, that's not an atypical situation. There are people that fall into that trap quite regularly.
It's not my position to comment on that because I'm not a clinician. What I've seen data shows that especially for localized prostate cancer, because it's progress so slow, and that's why people has been, okay, we can wait for a few months and it won't affect your treatment outcome. But from my experience looking at different countries, most of countries won't let you wait for so long. But again, the healthcare system is very different, so we have to factor that in as well. But I think from what you were just describing, that it's not just the healthcare system, it's how decision has been made.
And you said the operative words. There's a common perception amongst pharmacists and other professionals that prostate cancer is a slow-growing disease, which in all likelihood it is. But that doesn't mean it grows slowly in everybody.
Yeah.
And the message that's given out there is don't worry about it. you're going to die with prostate cancer, you're not going to die of prostate cancer. And you hear that continuously. And yet, when you look at prostate cancer patients that you talk about, the disease can progress very, very rapidly.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of a messaging error there that exists.
You're absolutely right, because like I'm epidemiologist, we look at population level data. We see that most of the prostate cancer are slow growing tumors, but again, that is at the population level. It makes a very much difference when you look at individual, and you might be that one of the I don't know, maybe 15% are fast growing tumor, and if you're one of the 15s, then you don't want to hear about the rest of the 85%. And that's why a lot of research right now is trying to develop how to distinguish which one's which. Because we, as far as I know, we don't have really strong, solid scientific knowledge to make that judgment. That's one of the reasons too.
One thing for you to maybe think about is the form and the style of communication between the oncologist and the patient.
Yep.
And one of the values of a support group is that we have the affected people communicating amongst themselves and asking questions and taking the time to be concerned about somebody else's condition or situation. And that's a very different form of communication. We're not giving advice,
Yeah.
but we spin information amongst us, and that's incredibly valuable for some people. I know of some men who have wanted to ask their medical oncologist, in the case that I have in mind right now, could I talk to somebody else in the similar circumstance? And there wasn't much of a reaction, and certainly not a positive reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, that individual learned about us.
Okay.
And within 24 hours, we had a meeting with the chap, and within probably another 48 hours, he was having his chemotherapy.
Oh, wow.
Because he'd come across some people that he could talk with. So think about the form of communication as you're looking at the design of your study. And we are social people. We talk with each other,
Yeah.
and that's valuable.
I was gonna say too, I've had an example of somebody in my neighborhood who knew my situation. I'm stage 4 with bone mets. And they had a friend in another neighborhood adjoining mine, and she had a brother in Regina with the same condition, and I contacted him, and he's keen because he's got nobody out there. There's no support group. I told him I was going to come out here tonight and talk to these guys, and he was really interested in how it was going to unfold and any information. I could tell he was just like completely out of it because he's on his own. He didn't really have a support system, and his doctor's surgery didn't give any information. So, yeah.
So, are the doctors giving any information on the supportive group?
No, none. I had no information on treatment or anything, basically. You're in and out of the door in 10 minutes flat.
So it's disconnected. So you have the supportive network here, existing, running, very effective. You have doctors there, but they're not making this connection.
No, you have to look online and find these guys.
This is nuts.
Yeah, I told the guy in Regina. I told the guy in Regina about this, and this group here, so he could look at it, and because I know Stuart's got all the YouTube videos on it. I said to him, it's a great resource. You should have a look at it. And he doesn't have something like Wellspring or other facilities too that you can kind of tap into. So a lot of this could be like even the ADT class, Life on ADT. They do it online now across Canada. It's not just local.
Yeah.
So the same thing should be happening on almost on the same basis for information, or with people who are isolated in other areas in Canada, I think.
So why this is not happening? Or the doctors do not like to do this, or they just don't have, they forbid this, or?
It's a professional situation. I think primarily that they, and this would be perhaps with Alberta Health Services, but I would suggest this across the country, that support groups are not necessarily appreciated to the extent that they could be because of the potential for the consultations getting extended by another 20 minutes and they don't have the time. Because you've got a more knowledgeable patient in front of you when that patient has come through the support group.
Okay.
More questions.
Right. That's a
And the
very
system
good
just
point.
doesn't accommodate much more than 15 minutes for a consult.
And also I found like for newly diagnosed individuals, they probably prefer to talk to the doctor instead of a supportive group or looking up information online. Like even if they can find some information elsewhere, they still want to confirm with the doctor. Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's a whole bunch of things, and as Stuart has mentioned, quite a few of them, or the most important ones, maybe in terms of patient time that is going to be utilized or required, and the repetitive nature of all of the questions, because you just basically generated the same questions there. But there is also, I think, a pattern in here, or there has, I've noticed a pattern that often men don't really like to talk about it or ask questions. It's often the wife that's asking the questions. I've seen a lot of people out there where the wife's got the notebook and she's doing all the documentation and providing the information, and the fellow just doesn't really want to get to know a lot of that detail. Why that is, I can't give you that answer, but there's a lot of different elements in there. And in personal experience, it took a long time, several years before my oncologist was even comfortable with my wife sitting in the meeting.
Wow.
Because it's another person that might ask questions. And they really, if you show up there, you've got a list of questions, man, their eyes roll. Because they know now they're going to be in there for half an hour, and they're stuck. And so they try to give you answers, it's always the same, yes, no. Should you worry about sugar? No. Should you worry about stress? No.
Oh.
Worry about diet? No. It's not going to change your cancer. Yeah. Those are kinds of the way it goes. It's very short, to the point answers on, and I see some head shaking. They've had the same experience. Just the way the world works.
Wow. That.
And I'll give you another example. I have a fellow in Montreal. He's getting a PSMA gallium-68 scan. And he's at the end of there's four of us going through it at the same time. Well, this is an expensive scan when you're there. I said, so you're here for prostate cancer? And I told Stuart, he says, no. He said, I had prostate cancer, but I had prostatectomy and it's gone. I said, well, why are you getting the scan? He says, well, my PSA is climbing again. I'm thinking, what? But you don't know why you're here for the scan. Your oncologist and say, well, obviously the cancer is back. And you would find that hard to believe. And that is God's truth. Like there isn't a lot of communication that happens.
And he flew thousands of miles.
No, he actually was from Montreal.
Oh, he was from.
But there was like four of us that went in. And they were all the same. Pardon?
It cost them some money to get
Oh, of
that.
course it did. It's probably cost him $3,000 to $4,000 at least. No, probably more. But he didn't have prostate cancer. But he was getting this test done.
Like you said, it's nuts.
But yeah, I mean, that's really nice. And actually, I just got connected with the urologist in Montreal. I'm going to talk to him and ask him if there anything we can do over there for this kind of and low value care and unnecessary test for the healthcare system and whoever is getting the test.
Well, anyway, so that was nuclear medicine, Jewish hospital. They're doing it in Montreal General Hospital, the PSA 68 gallium test. New scan.
He had to be recommended by somebody, so.
Well, he was recommended by his oncologist, he told me. But the oncologist didn't say, well, I think the cancer's back, buddy. That's why you're going for the scan.
I guess it's like there's no perfect system, and it's always nice in a way to find the problem is so we can improve it.
That's right.
Yeah.
go for it.
Sure. Lynn, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is most appreciative. These are collector's items, I want you to know, and they're really sought after, but anyway, that's just a small token of our appreciation.
I really
Thank you
appreciate
very
it. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure, like I said, I bored you at certain points, but I really appreciate the conversation. And if you have any question or suggestion, really, feel free to get in touch. I would really appreciate that.
Probably half of us will join your class once it's over.